Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Tomas-Keegan, and I want to welcome you to the show where we share a little bit of wit, a little bit of wisdom, and some wonderful experts to help women navigate career and life changes and challenges, and most importantly, for you to know that you're not alone. Each week through our conversations, we share resources to encourage women to be more confident, resilient, and brave in their career and life choices. Each week, we stream live weekly on Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time on the E360 TV network, which you can find on your favorite streaming services like Roku and Apple TV and Amazon Fire. And we go live simultaneously on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, where you can interact with us. And if you prefer to be on the run and listen to your favorite shows, we're also on all the podcast channels. So if something inspires you today and you want more, please subscribe to your favorite channel, leave us a comment, and share your favorite episodes so we can create more ripples in the world for women. Have you ever felt pressured to conform rather than be yourself? Or are you curious about how you can be authentic and how that can revolutionize your professional relationships? If either of those have been on your mind, then you're in the right place. Because today we delve into a topic close to the heart of every ambitious professional: the art of building authentic business relationships. It's a subject that touches not just how we communicate, but also how we show up, how we present ourselves in the workplace. In a world where walking on eggshells has become all too common, we're exploring the potential of standing in our power instead. I've invited a remarkable guest to join us in navigating this conversation. Kate King is not just any expert. She's a radiant life coach who, after 17 years as a licensed professional counselor and a board-certified art therapist, author, and artist, she's dedicated herself to lighting up the lives of her clients. Through the Radiant Life Project, Kate empowers individuals, especially women, to activate their inner spark and live with undeniable radiance. I just love the way that sounds. Kate's approach is unique, though. She blends brain science, diverse psychology teachings, spiritual practices, and creative expression, offering a holistic strategy for cultivating authentic living. Her work emphasizes the importance of genuine relationships for our professional success and our overall well-being and fulfillment. So let's get started and talk about building bridges with authenticity and confidence. Hello, Kate. Welcome.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you today and excited to talk.
I am too. Thanks so much for joining us. I am, we talk about authenticity a lot these days. I fear it will become an overused and maybe um, underappreciated word, but it is so important that we are real, that we allow ourselves to be real. So from your perspective, Kate, what part does authenticity play in workplace relationships?
I think it's a good question because so often we're asked to sort of show up in the workplace as the workplace wants, not necessarily as we are genuinely inspired to show up. And this shows up even early on with job descriptions and early interviews. We sort of say the right thing, we dress the right way, we do all of the things that we think we need to do to fit in that circumstance. And sometimes it's not until much later into that career path that a person realizes that they have deeply self abandoned by shrugging off who they truly are and their genuine self in order to fit the mold of what their workplace or their boss or their culture and their office has demanded of them. And that can lead to really deep levels of burnout and dissatisfaction. It can be tough to get out of bed in the morning and tough to focus throughout the day when you're not operating from that true north compass of who you are as a unique individual that can't fit a specific description or box because you're far too dynamic to fit inside of something like that. So I think that's the problematic thing that happens. And then there's the flip side of all of the freedom and the igniting of that spark that can be allowed to come forth once people show their authentic selves in the workplace and blur outside the lines of the boxes that we feel so necessity to live within. The freedom is just incredible.
Mm. You talked about some of the things that it can lead to, which are none of which are good, right? Feeling like you can't be yourself drains you of energy. It By the end of the day, when you go home and you're exhausted because you've tried to fit in, you've tried to live up to other people's expectations of who you should be in that environment. That's
Mhm.
draining.
Absolutely. And I think it's why recently we're seeing so many more entrepreneurial pursuits and startups because people are starting to get tired of the self-abandonment and of trying to fit themselves into, a square peg and make sense in a structure that doesn't take into account the unique individual. So people are saying, fine, I will use social media. I'll be my own brand. I will put my own passions into a business that's mine where I can thrive and be myself. And I think that's why we're seeing so much more of that because people want authenticity. They want to be that way. And they also want to invite others to join them in that space so the
Yeah.
connection feels authentic.
Yeah. And I think the statistics prove that out, especially for women, that there are more new businesses being started by women over the last several years than by men. So I think that speaks to how this affects women, especially, right? So, and I come from a 30-year corporate background in male-dominated companies and industries. So let's talk about that for a moment. How do authentic female relationships impact a positive outcome for women when they are living in that male dominated world?
We live now in a time of a lot of change. And when you think back
That's
to the time when women rarely even worked at all and the place for a woman was in the home, there's been so much change and it's been a progressive wave that I think has been gaining a lot of momentum and a lot of excitement. Women are being called forward to share their intelligence and their passions and their creativity. And so I do think that it's really increasing for women to bring more of themselves into the professional setting as they step into their identities as really valuable and powerful aspects in the professional world. And so I think as women meet each other in that realm, and they also meet the men who have been holding down that fort for so long, it opens up a lot of really exciting portals of opportunity where we can actively affect the evolution of how our world in a professional sense starts to evolve and grow into something so much more inclusive that allows there to be more of those feminine attributes that exist within both men and women because we all have masculine and feminine aspects of ourselves. But when a woman is in the workplace and she's shining that light from within herself through genuineness and authenticity, she's also modeling for other people how to do the same. And one of the really deep feminine qualities in the archetype of femininity is connection and nurturance and care for other people outside of the self, as well as for the self. So when a woman steps into that role and really owns it and invites others to meet her there, she impacts that wave and can affect positive change where there becomes so much more balance and a lot more opportunity for the collaborations that can come forward when there's authentic connection and the creativity that can start to spark and develop new ideas and possibilities. And there's also a softness for the humanness that each of us brings into the workplace that can sometimes feel like it's being shut down when there's too much of that, expectation of rigidness and fitting into boxes, but allowing people to have an understanding of our collective humanity. And sometimes you come to work and it's a rough day and you need extra support, or sometimes you have to leave early for an appointment or for childcare. And there's just more support for that holistic mindset around what women bring into the workplace.
Yeah, and I think women drive that. I have a couple of thoughts here. Women drive that in some, I know of some environments where it's not so welcomed at first, but I think it is a process that if we as women feel strongly about making this work for us, being in the corporate world and being authentic, we have to teach other people how to treat us with respect and with openness, right? And like you said, we have to model that for other women and for men so that we teach them, that, this is not, it's not your, I used to work for IBM, and I can remember as IBM was evolving, as I was getting to the end of my tenure with them, that people used to say, this is not your father's IBM anymore, right? Well, it's not your father's world anymore. The cultures need to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we as women who care deeply about being accepted as authentic, vulnerable, genuine, bringing all the human skills that we bring, um, that there needs to be an acceptance and an openness
I
about
think
that.
so. Yes. And I think also an understanding that it's a process.
Hmm.
When you're working with really deep systemic patterns,
Yeah.
sometimes it takes time. And it's like really unraveling the layers that have built the patterns over decades and decades, even centuries. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to have a sense of patience and also compassion for the people who are being asked to change and to think differently about things. And really just to understand that it's a process for each person in individual ways. And as empowered as one person might feel, another person might feel really threatened or afraid.
Right.
To
Right.
hold space for all of that.
Right. Right. And open the communication channels so that we can talk about it. We can change the conversation about it, and open the conversation so that that process has air,
Mhm.
kind of air to breathe, so that we can breathe life into it, right?
Yes.
And help that change occur.
Absolutely. And as a living process, there is a level of mystery to it because we don't exactly know where it's leading. We've never been
Right.
there before. So
Right.
as we're breathing life and light and openness and curiosity into that space, I think we have to leave room for the future to look similar to how we might imagine it and also potentially wildly different. And
Yeah.
that's part of the excitement, but it's also it's difficult for people to be open to change when it feels so uncertain and
Yeah.
ambiguous.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned the word curiosity, because I think if we approach change with curiosity, then the likelihood of us allowing different things to unfold, then and just be curious about, so what if this is better? What if this is, so yes, it's different, but what might come of that? Just being curious about that on all sides of the equation, then I think we have a better chance of evolving through this change so that it's a win-win for everyone.
I think so too. I think when you can apply curiosity to anything, it
Mm,
softens it, it allows openness for it, and it allows us to sort of dissolve some of the rigid thinking that might be limiting.
right.
So I always try to remind myself when I'm starting to feel like I know something or I'm clear about something, I infuse it with curiosity and I ask myself if there's space for the unknown and ways that I might be wrong or opportunities to rethink what I think I know. And curiosity is sort of the perfect ingredient in making that happen.
Right. And just allowing yourself to see it from another perspective, right? I am constantly, in so many of these conversations that I have on this show, of my very favorite saying by Dr. Wayne Dyer: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. It's so simple, yet so profound, right? All we need to do is look at things with curiosity and from a different perspective.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I agree. And when you're
yeah,
considering a workplace, you have many different people coming to the table with many different experiences, beliefs, backgrounds. And
yep.
if each of those people can embody curiosity, then their curiosity comes forward with all of what's made them authentically themselves. And then you have a roundtable of people who can be really open and creative and bring their gifts in different ways through the curiosity that is uniquely their own flavor.
And imagine the possibility of the ideas that can spark from that, the
Mhm.
solutions that we could collaborate to create. I mean, it creates an environment that is it's just so that it's so possible, right? It's
Mhm.
like anything is possible in an environment like that.
It's
I I
very
I
inspiring.
I hope we get there. I truly do. I hope we get there. So
Mhm.
let's talk about what might women expect to change personally, interpersonally, professionally, socially, when they approach professional relationships from this genuine place, when they allow themselves to do that.
I think they'll notice that there's a process involved, and at every layer of the process, they might feel different emotions. So, in the beginning, when a person decides to show up authentically and to stop trying to fit that mold, to stop self abandoning in ways that feel misaligned or exhausting or uncomfortable, there might be fear and fear of rejection of that authentic self, or fear and uncertainty. How are people going to like the real me? A lot of this traces back to early childhood, where so many of us have been taught wounding narratives about our true self and how we might not be good enough. We might be too much. We might be difficult, all these narratives that we carry forward. And so, in this first layer of showing up authentically, some of that might come to the surface. And so, I would invite people to be open, curious to those layers that come forward and not let them shut you down. Let them just be little warning flags from deep in your psyche that what you're doing feels different. And it feels like you're challenging something very old, potentially very young inside of yourself. And to move forward with an acknowledgement that it's actually really challenging to be your true self in a world that prizes showing up in ways that people expect and similarities in the ways that lead to our illusory values like wealth and success and popularity. So you're really going against the grain when you show up authentically. Once you move through that layer, I think there's a really beautiful sense of empowerment that comes through, where you start to recognize that you like your authentic self too, and other people might be responding to your true, genuine presentation of who you are with a lot of warmth, and they may welcome that version of you. And it might just feel so corrective and healing for those younger experiences that you're carrying with you that made you feel like you couldn't be that way. So it's nice to be met with openness and welcoming and to see yourself that way as well. And sometimes it's really interesting to notice the people who do not like the authentic self you're bringing forward, and to see curiosity in that too. That rejection isn't always that you're bad or that you're wrong. It's more likely that the person perceiving your authenticity feels in some way threatened by it, or something about your authentic self is reflecting something back to them about their authentic self that they're keeping hidden and under wraps for their own reasons, likely from early childhood as well. So it doesn't mean that everyone has to like you or that everyone will like you, but there will be people who see your light and meet it with their light. And then you get to have the benefit of that authentic connection, which can feel so much deeper and so much more intimate in ways that we haven't really been taught are accessible in the workplace, that we have to put on a mask and fake it through the day. All of that goes out the window when you show up authentically. You show up as yourself, as a real human, and you're met that way from other people. Then you have the opportunity to redesign how you are in the world, and you don't have to have different masks you wear depending on who you're with. You get to just be you. And that takes a lot of pressure off your system. And
Mm.
it's really freeing because you're not burning energy trying to fit and shape yourself into acceptable molds in your situation. You're just you. And if people like it, great. And if people don't like it, that's okay too.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that. It's okay that not everybody likes you, and that the changes you the changes you experience as you allow yourself to just be you in every situation are going to affect other people,
Mhm.
um, potentially a lot, because they see you changing and they like you the way you were, even
Right.
though you may not have liked it so much, right? And it's hard to, especially when those people are close to you, right?
Mhm.
They're in that what has always been your inner circle,
Or in a position of power that
or in
directs.
a position of power, right? Right.
Yes.
Right. At work, when you decide that you're going to change some things here, you need to take the pressure off, as you said, and be more you. Then some people just don't respond well to that. And you said this earlier. It's not so much about you being wrong um, or or changing in a bad way. It's more about their perceptions.
Yes. So it's important to realize that when you change something in yourself, it disrupts the ecosystem that you've been a part of, the homeostasis that has come to feel normal. It's like if you step a foot into a still pond, it's going to stir up a lot of sand from the bottom, and it will settle and there will be clarity again. But for a minute, everything feels a little bit disrupted because the ecosystem is different. And you're
Yeah.
powerful as a participant in your ecosystem, whether it's your office or your home or your neighborhood, your society, even the world. We all bring something that's valuable. And when we change it, it disrupts that homeostasis of the system. And if there were people who were invested in your smallness, in your compliance, in your shape shifting to be who they want you to be, they're not going to like it when you decide you don't want to do
Right.
that anymore. And they might push back. There might be resistance. That's not a sign to go back into your smallness, to go back into your shell. that's a sign to gain some support that can stand behind you as you show up authentically. And that's where community comes in. That's where heartfelt conversations, where you talk about why you're changing and why it's important to change, and you invite people to meet you in that place of change.
Right.
That all comes in there, because people who are invested in your smallness will never want to see you grow.
That's so true. That is so true. And I think about work situations when you were describing that, it can make you feel like you're being left out, like you're not heard, like you're misunderstood. And that can feel very uncomfortable in a corporate situation where you used to be. Yeah, this happened to me at one point in my career. I used to be like the star. And then things had to shift for me for a variety of reasons. My values, my life was shifting, and my values were shifting, and I had to shift as well. And all of a sudden, I wasn't seen the same way. And it was a very uncomfortable situation. And I really teetered on, do I change it back so that I'm the star again?
Right.
Or do I keep moving in this direction because it supports me, it supports my value, my revised values, right? Which shift all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had to go in this direction, and then I had to make a decision about what would happen over here. So, what happens in my career? What do I have to decide to do instead so that I can be head in this direction and feel? And you mentioned support. That is so critical.
Mm-hmm.
We have to surround ourselves with people who support who we are and how we're changing
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah,
that we don't feel alone in that.
absolutely. I think there's also something to be said for gaining clarity on your values. So if you get a little shaky when it gets uncomfortable and you feel resistance and pushback, if you can remember why you're changing, which
Yep.
values you're now bringing to the forefront and making a priority, that acts as a kind of sustenance for your inner process where it feels difficult, but it also feels important. And you
Right.
remember that the greatest growth that happens comes when we're uncomfortable. And sometimes you have to move through that dark night of the soul to get to the new dawn. And it takes a couple of days, couple of weeks, years even, for other people to really see you as you step into the new chapter of yourself that's based on the values that are so core and essential
Right.
to your being.
And they become your guiding light,
Mhm.
because you're right. If that, you're doing what you're doing, you're changing whatever it is you're doing it for a reason.
Mhm.
And the reason is based on whatever it's based on, what the why you're doing it, the values that have shifted for you. And if that becomes your guiding force, then going back is not an option when you feel very strongly about where you're headed.
Mhm.
But then
Absolutely.
some decisions have to be made, some choices have to be made, because there are still people who are involved, and they're sending you messages that are bouncing off the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. This
Yeah.
is why I teach authentic integrity, which is my fusion of those two words. I think of authenticity as what is real, and I think of integrity as what is true. And so sometimes authenticity isn't enough all by itself, but when you bring in the truth and the honesty and that really deep integrity, it helps to propel you forward as you're bringing the authenticity, and it creates this really powerful container that can hold other people's opinions, the resistance they may show up, the force that you're feeling inside yourself to move forward and to grow. And so within authentic integrity, I think you can really sustain a change and move through the layers of what needs to come through you and from you to make that change permanent for whatever phase of life you're in, and understanding that it might change again. And that's important too, that our values do shift through time. And we have to continually pivot to be in alignment with those values so that we are authentic and we do live with that integrity. So just holding that perspective that this is the me of now, and it sure is different from the me of last year or 10 years ago, but I don't really know who it might lead to in the future. It's a stepping stone. And I think
Right.
that's what life is.
That's right. I mean, we all evolve over time.
Mhm.
And you're so right. I love the perspective. It's not the me of, last year or 5 years ago, but it's also not going to be who you will become
Right.
as you evolve even further.
Right.
Right. And that's the cycle that's the human cycle we are in. And
Mhm.
thank God for it, literally, because can you imagine if we just stayed stuck
I
in a
don't
place
know.
we don't belong? I can't imagine it. I just can't imagine it.
I can't either. And I don't know what the purpose of that would be, because I
No.
think so much of the purpose of us being here and doing this game of life
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
growth. And growth only happens when change happens. And change
Right.
can only happen when courage is present, right? So there's
Yeah.
this chain of events that leads to the development and the individuation of who we are in that authentic place. And I think it's important to remember that it's valuable, even if it's only present for one day before it changes again. There's always that intrinsic value that is with you, within you. It's your birthright. And no matter who you become and how you change, you're never less valuable.
No. No. Always more.
Mhm.
Always more. Yeah. Okay. So, how do authentic relationships positively impact, when we can get to that point, right, of having truly authentic relationships
Mhm.
in all of our relationships? How does that impact the brain and our nervous system?
We are complicated systems. And
Really? Are we?
we are so, yes, we're
Yes, we
complicated.
are complicated. Yes.
But we're also very beautifully structured. So many of our systems know how to run automatically, which is the autonomic nervous system. That's the automatic functions that help you breathe, keep your heart rate stable. But that's also the part of your nervous system that's scanning the world 4 times every second, looking for threats. And threats can come in all different shapes and forms. They used to be predators when we were on the savannah. But now it feels really threatening when there's a person who doesn't like you, or a threat of rejection, a threat of losing your job or losing respect in the eyes of someone superior to you at your workplace. So, as your nervous system is scanning for these threats, if there's something that it really grasps onto, like, yes, this is a threat, it throws your nervous system and your brain chemistry into protective mode. It is very hard to be authentic when you're in protective mode. That's the place where you will fight, you will run away and make yourself small, you'll play dead, or you'll go into fawning, people pleasing mode, which is really common in the workplace, especially. I'll be whoever you want me to be, I'll show up however you want me to show up. Just don't take away your respect for me or this job that means so much to me. And so when we're in one of those survival responses, the authenticity is buried underneath all of the nervous system's perception that we're not safe. So, in order to have safety in the workplace and to feel that our authentic self is not only welcomed, but might even be embraced and held with care and sensitivity, there has to be a openness and a willingness in the workplace, which is why I think we're seeing so many companies large and small scale, really shifting to become more emotionally attuned to their employees, to become more aware of when someone's in a trauma response. And now there's personal development in so many different companies because we understand that people who feel unsafe in the workplace aren't actually benefiting the company at large and all of the intrinsic connections within it. So when you do have a company that has a trauma sensitivity and awareness for emotional intelligence, connection, and attunement, then all of the nervous system scan, it's not coming up with any kind of danger. It's thinking, wow, this is a pretty safe place. And then authenticity can emerge. And when authenticity emerges and is met with welcomeness, the neurochemistry that floods your system is not threat and fear for your safety. It's warmth and attunement and wanting more connection. You get a dopamine hit. It feels good. It makes you want to move more towards the pleasure of connection. You have oxytocin in your brain, which is the bonding hormone. And you have so much chemistry inside of you that leads you to continue the cycle that has started. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle of reaching out and being met, reaching back, having space where it can all just be held with care and sensitivity and love, not just on the mental level, the emotional level, but also on the physical level and the biophysiological level inside the body.
You're right. Complicated systems. It fascinates me and it amazes me all at the same time how we are built. And I love the way that you shared how, in pretty simple terms, thank you very much, um, that when we are in survival mode, whatever that looks like for us, right? For each of us individually, if we feel like threatened at work, if we don't feel like we can be ourselves, our authenticity gets buried
Mhm.
and it can't emerge until we feel safe, until we are in a safe environment. I can think of a number of my clients who have said to me over the years, I don't feel safe until I get home. I can be myself when I'm at home. And that's just a signal, isn't it? That whatever's happening for them in the workplace doesn't feel safe. Therefore, and it's not their fault. This is how we are made. This is how we're built. Your authenticity can't emerge when you are threatened.
Absolutely. And what emerges instead is the striving, that hedonic treadmill of always kind of working toward the carrot on the stick where you'll feel better or you'll feel important. And it leads to burnout because when your
Uh-huh.
body, actually, our nervous system was made to go into that survival response. It's there for a reason. And we're supposed to come back out of it. We're
Right.
supposed to, shake it off, move through it, and then regain safety. But what we are not supposed to do is stay in a survival response for a prolonged period of time because that takes so much investment and energy from the entire body and mind and heart system. It's completely exhausting. And
Yes.
so we find now that people who are living in a perpetual state of survival mode are incredibly vulnerable to burnout. And burnout isn't just feeling kind of apathetic or tired. Burnout is a really deep, difficult hole that you have to dig yourself out of. It bleeds out of just the workplace. It makes your family relationships strained. It makes your sleep struggle, which makes you feel not so well. It affects your diet. It affects everything.
Right.
So if you see authenticity and safety as a preventative and an antidote to burnout, then you can see why it makes a lot of sense for companies to invest in having emotionally healthy employees, because in the long term, that's going to create longevity. And those employees are going to stick with you and they're going to work in healthy ways. They're going to enjoy their work. They're going to give their passion to it. That's what a company needs. They don't need people who are burned out and needing to
Right.
pay for medical bills, pay for leave. That's really expensive for a company.
Or leave the company because they can't do it anymore. I
Right.
can't tell you how many women I talk to. I hold career roundtables every couple of weeks, and many of the women who attend are talking about these kinds of situations that they are in, where they are, unappreciated, undervalued, all those unwords, right?
Mhm.
And I ask them, how long has this been going on? And many of them are saying, oh, it's 2 years, it's 3 years, it's 5 years, way too long. So I worry about them. Anyway, but now that you've, put the explanation behind it, right? We're not meant to stay in that mode, that survival mode, for
Mhm.
too long. It's there for, it's a safety mechanism for us. It's a defense mechanism for us, but it's not intended to be turned on all the time.
Right. It's maladaptive to our growth and development. It brings us in the wrong direction. And
Right.
so, what I love to see in the current work culture is that we're being brought back into a more adaptive way of living where there is some sensitivity now to the nervous system and regulating it and trauma responses and so many companies offering therapy. There's a lot of movement towards this because I think companies have started to see that it doesn't really work in their favor to just drill people to this place of burnout and make them shunt their authenticity. It doesn't work well for anyone, and I'm glad to see
Right.
that that's changing.
Yeah, I am too. I am so glad to. And I'm so glad that you do the work that you do, and can help support the company, that trend in companies
Mm.
now. So I talk about boundaries all of the time with my clients, and how that is um, that's a, a practice and a skill that will benefit them greatly. But where does boundary work come into play in authentic professional relationships? How do you, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think of boundaries as the place where I end and you begin. And so they communicate, they're different than requests. Requests are when you ask something of someone, like, uh, please don't ask me for to complete a huge project in 24 hours, right? That would be a request. A boundary would instead communicate what you will or won't do. So it would sound like, if you give me a huge project and ask for it back in 24 hours, I will not complete it. And when you communicate a boundary with clarity like that, it communicates an expectation for the other person so that they understand where your edges are, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do. And if they ask certain things of you, they have a pretty clear understanding of whether they're going to get it or not. And it's really fair to be able to tell people what your boundaries are, because then they can adapt and they may say, oh, I didn't realize 24 hours wasn't enough time for a project like that. Thanks for communicating that. How much time do you need? So it gives you the opportunity to make requests, to set expectations, and to have a really healthy dynamic in the workplace so that you're not operating at 120% all the time, leading to that place of look a little different in the workplace than they do on the home front, because certain things at work, you just don't have a lot of choice. You have to do certain tasks.
Yeah.
Whereas at home, you do have a little more choice. You can decide not to participate in certain groups or not to wash the dishes every day. You get to set your own expectations. But in a professional setting, there might be a list of things that you really don't enjoy, but you still have to do. And that's a really healthy place to start installing some boundaries.
Yeah. So I get a lot of pushback because I have a very similar approach to yours. But I get a lot of pushback on that. So let me push you back a little bit and see what you
Please.
think. So,
Mhm.
in a work situation, when you're given a project, like your example, and told that it's a big project and you got to turn it around in 24 hours, and you say, I won't complete it in 24 hours.
Mhm.
And the response back to you is, but you gotta.
Mm. Yeah. So that is a really important narrative to challenge, that you have no choice and you're expected to be a robot. So I think that's a teaching moment where you could say to this person, look, I understand that certain things are time sensitive. And if this truly does need to be returned in 24 hours, I'm not the right person to do it, because I don't have the capacity or the capability to offer you the quality of work that will make this project successful. So if you are truly on this time crunch, please try to find someone else who can give you the quality you're looking for.
Or give me help,
Yes.
right? Or I can't do it alone,
Hmm.
right?
So that's
I
when you get to have needs and be a real person instead of a robot.
Right, right. Love that. Okay, great. I'm sure that will help a lot of the women in our audience who are wondering, how do I push back on that?
I think you have to think about it instead of a conversation that has just two parts of, will you do this? No. It can
Yeah,
be much more complicated. Will you do this? No. Okay, why? Here's why. What do you need to be able to do it? Here's what I need. It can be an evolving, unfolding conversation that started
right,
with a boundary. And that's
right,
actually the most productive way to do it, because then we're learning within the workplace and we're growing. And then maybe the person has a new understanding and it's easier for you to ask for help and everybody grows.
right. And you're negotiating, right? And negotiation is nothing more than a conversation. It is not a confrontation, right? So if we approach it that way, then it's just a conversation, and you get to tell people what you need in order to do what's being asked,
Yes. And
right?
that's so
Yeah,
important, because your voice really does matter no matter how far down on the food chain you may be in your company. It's important that you own the right to have a voice and to be able to express the needs that you need to express to do your job well. And I think upper management will really appreciate feedback about, I can do my job best if these needs are met, because they want you to do your job best. So it
right.
might just be a lack of information.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So long as you're talking to people who are open to, this approach, right?
Mhm.
And as you said, more and more organizations are evolving to have an appreciation for and an empathy for what's going on with their workforce, and understand that their workforce is their biggest asset, and when they treat them well, then they get their best out of them.
Yes.
I want to talk about your book for a second, because you told me something really exciting. So Kate has a book called The Radiant Life Project. And tell us what just happened.
Oh, just this week, I got the news that my book was put on the very short list of books by CEO World magazine, and it is the on the top 5 books. Let's see, the title was "Soulful Books Every Leader Should Read in 2024." And it just got me so excited, because I love
Yeah.
hearing that leadership is interested in inner work and in professional and personal growth. So being added to this list with CEO World was huge and so exciting, because I know CEOs, CFOs, executives, entrepreneurs are reading this. And if they are being inspired to do their own work, it does create a ripple effect so far beyond them. And
Absolutely.
I'm just thrilled that my book is on this list. It feels like such a high compliment.
It's an honor. It's truly an honor for you, and congratulations for that. I am excited for you and about this event, because it is encouraging to me that the opportunity for this to become a top down evolution rather than a bottom up movement, right? For employees to try to get, to earn appreciation, to earn their value, all of that. And instead, it's coming from the top down, and it will be an environment, a culture that is created in which they are
Yes.
appreciated and valued, and that just warms my heart and excites me to no end.
I agree with you. I am so excited. I'm riding this wave probably for days about
Yeah,
being part of that list. And the other four
yeah,
books on that list were incredible as well. And I think it's beautiful that we're inviting readers who are also leaders to read soulful books. It's
yeah,
just beautiful. It feels like
yeah,
a synergy that has been long necessary, and
yeah,
working to this place where leaders can have soulfulness to them too.
right,
It's such a
right.
gift to everyone they work with.
Yep, it is indeed. Kate, I've loved this conversation. I encourage everyone to read your book. It's a beautiful book. And all the leaders out there, please get Kate's book, and let's make this a top down um, movement, right? So, Kate, I wish we could talk more, but we've got to wrap this up. So, would you help us wrap this in a bow? Just give us your three key takeaways for our audience to take with them.
Mm. Piece number one is, even when it feels challenging to be your authentic self, still step forward and try to show the parts of you that are authentic to the world.
Mm.
Piece number two, community is really important. So try to find aligned community that supports who you truly are, not just who you want to be seen and perceived as on the outside. And piece number three, healthy, attuned leadership does start from the top and trickles down to affect everyone further down the food chain, outside of the company, and in the whole world. So try to do your best from whatever position you are to do your work first, so that the light you're shining into the world and into your business and company is a light that is attuned and open and curious.
And I love that. Can you imagine what will happen when our leaders become attuned, right? And then we are shining our light from the inside out, and we are playing in harmony, right?
Mhm.
Then the leader we can become will will just send more ripples and affect more people. And we teach people how to treat us, and then we model that, and other people respond to that. I mean, it's amazing, the
Mhm.
ripples, the ripple effect it can have. It's just amazing. Kate, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I know our viewers are going to want to get in touch with you. So, what's the one best way they can do that?
TheRadiantLifeProject.com is my hub for everything. So feel free to check me out there. And I love to communicate with my audience and people in my community. So drop me a line.
Perfect. Kate, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was lovely.
And for those watching and listening, I really appreciate that you're part of this community. So if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, click a star. Let us know. And creating and sharing resources for women is one of my favorite things to do. And that's what we do with the show every week. Another favorite thing is being a career and life coach for women navigating challenging times, and helping them get unstuck, to explore new possibilities and find harmony in their careers and lives. So, if something resonated in this episode with you and you'd like a fresh perspective, reach out. Let's talk. The links for Kate and me are in the show notes below. And then let's meet again here next Thursday, as always, at 10 a.m. Pacific time for another inspiring conversation. Because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. Let's create more ripples. Till next time, I'm Maria Tomas-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.